Until reconnecting with her last fall, the last time I saw my Aunt Christine Reinhard was on the American television series Unsolved Mysteries. That gulf between television and reality was 30 years. A lot happened in those 30 years, but what didn't happen was learning the truth. My aunt is one of 6 siblings. The oldest, she's followed by my dad, who is next to her in this picture. My grandfather didn't think much of girls and women, and so she never received the attention from him that she should have and that she really did earn. One of my earliest memories was a trip to Madison, Wisconsin with my parents to visit her. And I remember being in her apartment where she served me a hot apple cider with a cinnamon stick, which is how I learned that cinnamon was not just a powder. And I was blown away. She was like me, the eldest, who liked cinnamon. I remember first hearing about Craig Williamson after they eloped in Lake Tahoe on October 7th, 1990. They met that September in Port Townsend over in Washington at a New Age retreat, and they were married a month later. That's crazy to me, even now. I only met Uncle Craig a couple of times, and they later came to Wisconsin by convincing my grandfather to loan them money to start a fish farm, unheard of at that time. They called it the Three Corners Aqua Farm, and they raised tilapia, unknown then. Then on August 28th, 1993, Uncle Craig drove a converted school bus to Colorado Springs, Colorado to pick up new fish. And he called my aunt on August 30th to get a wake-up call for the next day so he could drive home, only he didn't respond. His disappearance was a shock. It was a jolt out of a dream, my childhood abruptly ending. He disappeared, the rental car was discovered in Mexico, and then my aunt started saying, well, he was mugged, and he was suffering from amnesia. We started getting doubts to that. It was a mess. And we learned about the financial difficulties of the fish farm and wasn't making enough money to be able to pay down its debt. So the doubt and the infighting began, and my dad grew frustrated. He started to think that maybe my sister swindled him, and yeah, it just skyrocketed. Meanwhile, my aunt heard about a possible sighting of Craig in the Pacific Northwest, and so she spent some $3,000 and drove 7,000 plus miles to try to find him. She was upset over how the investigation was going, so she took it upon herself from November 1993 through January 1994 to search. Another part of the story was the show Unsolved Mysteries, which started in 1987, which I loved. Not the true crime stuff, I love the paranormal stuff. That was my jam. And interestingly, it was also the same time that the X-Files started when all of this was going on with my family. So it was interesting for me. I got kind of into paranormal studies when I was in middle school. So the show, whenever it would talk about Bigfoot or UFOs, ghosts and psychic powers and stuff, that I loved. I didn't care so much for true crime even then or now. I mean, maybe it's because I have my own unsolved mystery. So you can imagine me sitting down on May 25th, 1994, watching the episode where my aunt tells her story about trying to find Craig. And the whole thing's up on YouTube now, and people are still talking about it. And those 11 minutes and 30 seconds really changed my life. She was on Unsolved Mysteries because the producers liked the idea of a woman taking it on her own to find her husband. But they didn't talk about us or my grandmother, who was supporting her and had always been supporting her when Grandpa didn't. I think the biggest problem for me was that Chris did not come back to see Grandma after she was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer in 1994. And she died November 15th, 1994, in the family room of the house she lived in next to ours on the golf course. She didn't even attend the funeral. Grandma was perhaps sick the entire time she was helping Chris cope with everything that was going on. At least that's what Dad said. But by the time the illness was pronounced enough that she could no longer deny it, there was nothing the doctors could do. And, she was gone quick, and there goes the family. And maybe the funny thing is that because of that Unsolved Mysteries episode, Craig reappeared. He turned up in July of 1995. His story matched Chris's. He had amnesia, didn't remember Chris at all, and they later got divorced so that he could remarry. She moved to Cody, Wyoming. I don't know much about her life in Cody. I know she remarried, had breast cancer, and then she was widowed. And truthfully, I didn't want to know. I was mad. I was mad she wasn't there for grandma. And from what I heard from dad, I blamed her. I was so mad at what happened. About 7 years ago, my dad was diagnosed with a genetic version of amyloidosis, which is a very debilitating disease that's on my grandpa's side of the family. And then on February 7th, 2024, my 46th birthday, my aunt and dad spoke. I'm my dad's caregiver while we live here in Dickinson, which is only 6 hours away from Cody, Wyoming. So we went there last October, and I got to see my dad and my aunt reunite after some 30 years. Before we left, she gave me boxes of documents and items from the case, from what happened. And I'm going to go through them and see if I can make sense of this story and her and me and everything that happened to all of us, really.